Welcome everyone to lesson 6, where we'll be talking about the view layer and doing our first bits of implementation with that and starting to flesh out more of our controllers as well in the process. This video will be incredibly helpful to some of you because I think in the instructions it has you creating test cases and things that I really don't care about, and quite frankly I really don't think you have to do for some of these view methods. So if you're watching this video before you read the assignment, then great. If you're doing it after you do the assignment and you've already done the assignment, that's great. If you read the assignment and watch the video, some of those things like where it says develop the test case for the certain do action method or whatever, you do not need to worry about that. I will show you what we'll be doing and walk you through step by step what we'll be doing this week with the view. So the view layer is where the user inputs characters to take actions and they get their view or all the text back that we're trying to inform them of all the different things. The first view that we're going to create is the welcome view, and this view is where we're going to display that welcome banner and collect the player's name. So to do that, we first need a view package. So I'm going to create a new Java package. It's going to be byui.cit260.savethecity.view. And I'm going to create that view. And within that view, I'm going to create a new class called welcome view. So in my welcome view class, let's create first an empty constructor because I always like to do that. We don't need any parameters on this view. And then the assignment this week talks about this divide and conquer strategy of writing your methods or writing your classes or writing any of your functionality. And this is super important because it's done throughout all of computer science. Whether you're a CSS designer or a JavaScript writing JavaScript code or even HTML. I know Angular, which is a new framework for JavaScript, they have this divide and conquer method where you write little submodules. It's super important because it keeps everything nice and distinct and separated. And so that's what we're going to do here with this view class and all of our view classes and everything that we do in this class. We don't want methods that are hundreds of lines long. We want simple ones that are easy to understand. And so this first method that we're going to create is the start program method. Actually, I'm going to rename this. This was named start program view recently. I guess in the last semester it was welcome view from what I remember. So I am going to actually rename this as start program view so that I'm in line with the reading. Okay, so we're going to create the start program method, and I'm going to have it return void because I don't quite frankly know if I'll be returning anything right now. If I knew I was returning something, I would have changed the return type. So in our start program method, we're going to first display the welcome banner. And again, we could do that here, and I will do that here for now just to show you we can, using system.out.println. And we're going to just put this giant method in here that's going to have some nice formatting. This is not formatting the way I'd like it to. Maybe I can coax it into doing what I want it to do. If I fix these. Welcome to Hero City. No, it's really not going to like the way I'm doing this. Okay, let me try and figure out a better way. Let's create a string called welcome. And then let's do welcome gets That's not so bad. The tabbing on that isn't so bad. So, welcome to Hero City. Actually, we should probably start with all those equals. And then you'll want a new line at the beginning of each of your lines. This game will be fun. More text here. So you can put whatever you want in your welcome banner. You will want to do it all in a single string for later assignments. Trust me, you'll want it in a single string with these \n characters, which are special characters to do new lines within a single string. And like I said, you'll want this all as a single string because later we'll be manipulating this, and it'll be easier if you start with it like this. So, and then I can output that welcome string, right? System.out.println takes one argument, the string you want to output. So now I have the start program method. I can go and call it for my main method. So I'll get a new start program view. And again, starting to type and then hitting control space brings up all the additional possibilities, so I don't have to worry about the imports or anything. I'm going to call this my start program, and I'm going to create a new start program view for it, for this variable. And then I'm going to call that method. And if I run this, you can see that it outputs everything I'd expect it to, except for I obviously forgot a new line to put that little end of the banner on its own new line. So I can jump back here, add that new line, and run it again, and it looks better now. Okay, but this isn't really what we want to do with divide and conquer. So let's move this to its own method called output welcome. And actually, let me make sure, to be consistent with the assignment, I'll call it display banner. I'm not going to be picky on what you name your methods. Name them whatever you want. But this will just display the banner. And then from my start program method, I can call display banner. And you'll see this will run the exact same way I expect it to. So that's perfect. So the next part of the assignment has us collecting the player's name. And so I'm going to create a string called player name, and I'm going to create a method called getPlayerName that's going to get that player name for me. Obviously, it's throwing an exception here because I don't have the getPlayerName method, so let me add that. I know I'm returning a string type because I want the player name to be returned and to be assigned to this variable. So I'm going to create a method with a string return type that's called getPlayerName. It accepts no arguments, and then I get to do something in the body. And again, it's throwing an error right now because I don't return anything. So let's return just a static string right now, just to make sure that this method is working. Actually, let's implement it because we're not going to use this until a little bit later. So let's actually implement the getPlayerName method. So mine might differ a little bit from the reading, but the logic is the same. I need to somehow make sure that the player has entered a correct name by our standards before continuing on and returning that name. And to do that, I'll need some of these control statements, like a while loop. So let's create a Boolean isValidName, and we'll start that off as false. We'll create a string that is the name to be returned, and we'll assign that as an empty string for now. And then we need a scanner from our first assignment. We need some way to read in the input from the keyboard, and a scanner is the way we do that. So we're going to create a scanner. We'll call it keyboard, and we'll create a new scanner from that and read from system dot in. And that's going to read from the console, the command line, which is what we want. And so now, while I don't have a valid name, I'm going to keep doing something, and then eventually I'll get a valid name, I'll jump out of that while loop, and I'll return this name that's valid. So let's first read from the keyboard scanner the string that was entered. So let's create a new string called input, and we'll get keyboard.next. I like next line actually better than anything, because that'll read till the next input, the enter character. And then we can check this input. We can say if input is null or input dot, and there's a whole bunch of string methods, right? Again, I just hit the dot character, and if this menu doesn't come up, then control space will bring it up. And then I can say, look through all these methods and start typing one in, and length, and you can see this returns the length of this string. So let's just say the length has to be greater than 2, maybe greater than or equal to 2. So if both these conditions are met, if input is not null and the length of the input is greater than or equal to 2, I have a valid input. So is valid name becomes true, and the name that I'm going to be returning is whatever they input. Right? I'm assigning input to this name variable. Otherwise, I'm going to just keep going on, because this valid name is still false, and it's going to ask for the next line. What we could actually even do in this is in an else, we could say, we could tell our user that the input is invalid, name must be at least 2 characters. And then we'll return the name. Okay, so let's make sure this worked. So right after here, just for testing purposes, I'm just going to output the player's name. So let's try this. Well, I'll put a little label before it first. Name is, and then the player name. So let's try this out. Let's run the program. So the program is still running. It hasn't ended yet because it's waiting for input. So if I put input in there, it says name is Brogy, and it runs successfully. If I put in a single character, it says input is invalid, name must be at least 2 characters, and it waits for me to input something again. So we know the logic is working, but something isn't quite right. It looks like we probably should prompt for the player's name before just asking for it. So let's make that adjustment. Let's jump over here, and before we jump into our while loop, let's prompt for their name. Prompt for the name. And we could do this on a print line or a print. Print line just advances the cursor to the next line after outputting. Print does not. Print line is more common than print. So yeah, now it prompts us for our name, and everything works the way we'd expect it to. So jumping back here, get player name method is ready to go. Now we need to create a player from this name and put it somewhere. So to do that, I need a new controller. I'm going to create a new class called program controller. And this controller is going to be special. It's going to have a bunch of static methods in it. And I'll explain why in a second. But what I'm going to do is create a method, a static method, like I said. It's going to return a player, and it's going to be called createPlayer. And I'm going to accept a string. That's the player name. And what I'm going to do is create or import this player class from my model and create a new player, and then set name to be player name, and then return that player P. I should do some checks of logic in here, like if player name is null, then return null, and a whole bunch of other things. I'm going to keep it simple for now. Actually, you know what? I can do that really quickly. So now I have a little check to make sure that if they input null, I don't want anything to do with it. So now, back over my view, instead of outputting, well, I can still output the player's name, but I'm going to call this program controller, create player, pass in the player name, and I have this player P. Maybe I'll call it player to make more specific. And it's throwing an exception because I haven't imported the player class. So to do that easily, put my cursor at the end of player, hit Control Space, and that's not going to work for me. So I'm actually going to just click this and add the import. Okay, so now I have this player. I need somewhere to put it, right? And we can make sure again that the player name was set correctly by instead of outputting the player name variable, I can output the player.getName. But I still need somewhere to put this player that I'll be able to reference throughout the rest of this application. And that's going to be super critical for the player, the map, and maybe a couple other things that we'll be using. So the reading recommends that you put static properties on your main class. If you want to do that, that is fine. You can add a public static player and a public static, and you need to add the import for this, game, which is not in my model. So I'll add a new class for game, and this is gonna maintain the game's state. So the map, where the player is, all the items that have been collected, everything. So I'll leave it empty for now because we don't need it, but game. Make sure to add the import for this. And then I'll have to add getters and setters for this. Actually, if these are public, I don't have to, but I should make them private. And then public getters and setters. And these are going to be static getters and setters. I wonder if I can add them here. I can. Excellent. So now you have the getters and setters. You can do this and that will work. Another way would be to create a singleton instance of a class, of the game class. And I'll go into that in a different video. So now I can say save the city.set. And again, I'll have to add the import. And this is why I don't recommend putting these in this main class, because it always wants you to, when you do the recommendations, it always prompts for the package first. But now I can set the player as this player, and then what we want to do instead of just doing a sysout of the player name there, we're going to display the second part of the welcome, which uses the player name. So we'll create another public void display welcome message, and this will take this player's name as a string parameter, and then here is where we'll do our system out print line, and we can do another banner because we can, and I'm just going to be lazy on this one, and actually I don't need that many. I'm just going to say welcome and then the player's name, and then enjoy the game. And then we can call that method. So we can call display welcome message. We can pass in player.getName, and everything should work the way we'd expect it to. So let's run our application. And welcome Bro G, enjoy the game. So this worked perfectly. So that's kind of part one of the application. Is there's a lot of setup there, right? You're creating a bunch of new classes if you don't have them. The program controller, a game which will maintain the state of everything. We'll be using this quite frequently later on and as we go. We'll be adding the static properties to the Save the City class, a bunch of methods in the Start Program view, and then you'll move on to the other menus. So I'll do that in a separate video to kind of shorten this up because this is already 20 minutes. So look forward to that. If you want to just do the reading and go off the reading, that's perfectly fine as well. But yeah, this is part one of the assignment. Everything you pretty much need to do and need to know. If you have any problems, Developer Forum is the way to get answers. This is where we're actually starting to code, where you start to learn, okay, I need to define my arguments, my return type, my delimiters better be spot on, and trying to get things to actually start working together. And we actually have a program that's running now. So yeah, part two, welcome, or the main menu view and the help menu view coming up.